Justice Department is dropping the subpoenas it filed demanding testimony and phone records from New York Times journalists. Now, the department had sought the testimony over the journalists reporting on security concerns with the Qatari-gifted Air Force One, but during a heated hearing yesterday, attorneys for the DOJ admitted to making mistakes when issuing the subpoenas. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman joins us. We were talking about this yesterday, how this was incredibly sort of significant that something like this was happening. Now they're dropping this. What were the errors that the judges said were made during the hearing?
I mean, Kelly, there were quite a few. To begin with, the judge made it clear that he felt that procedures and regulations were not followed here. He said that these subpoenas to reporters, they're supposed to be a last step that's taken. First, the government has to try to obtain the information it wants through other means. And instead, he said this happened so quickly. But there were a couple specific errors that the government actually admitted were mistakes. For instance, with the reporters, their phone records were subpoenaed. They also subpoenaed a mother and two spouses of the journalists. They said that was actually done in error, that there was a public database and they thought those numbers were associated with the reporters. And then there was actually a really notable moment in court where the judge actually called up an attorney who had filed a non-disclosure agreement that was related to those phone records. And he made him come from the gallery of the courtroom to the prosecution table or to the government's table so that he could grill him because there was certain information that was missing. The prosecutor had not said that the files were related to reporters or to the New York Times. He had said that it would hurt the investigation to disclose the records had been retrieved. And actually, the investigation was already public. So there was a point where the judge actually said, you know, why shouldn't I be offering sanctions here? Because you perjured yourself on a court filing. So this was quite a remarkable hearing yesterday.
I made an error myself yesterday when I erroneously asked you a question regarding how far back the New York Times lawyers were looking for information from the Department of Justice. But there was an interesting nugget, which is that it wasn't just the time frame of which these reporters reported on this plane. They wanted information going back to the start of the year.
That's right, Vlad. And that didn't get discussed in court so much yesterday, but the government did make it clear that the targets here are not the reporters. They are the sources from inside the government. Because the judge questioned this. He said there had been some reporting previously on security concerns with Air Force One. So what was it about this story that the government was perturbed by? And they said it was because there were sources from inside the administration talking to the Times about this. They also said they would consider immunizing the reporters. But, you know, we have to think about the consequences of that. As journalists, if our sources feel that they're vulnerable, then that creates major problems for freedom of the press.
And they would have had, look, they would have had to have known that. If you want to suss out a leak within your own administration, there's a way to do that without subpoenaing journalists to find that information. You're trying to lead the American people to believe that the only way you can figure out who's leaking to the New York Times or to any reporter is by asking for the reporters' records when these people work in some of the most secure buildings in the world.
I know, it's like clean up your own backyard.
Thank you very much, Kelly O'Grady.
happy
That's
to
the point
put a
that I'm
button
trying to
on
make
it.
with so many words.
And that was exactly the judge's point, Vlad. You know, there are other ways you should be trying to get this information. And he made the government's lawyers essentially promise that moving forward, this would not happen again.
Wow. All right, Katrina, I really appreciate you joining.
Thank you.